Hey everybody, welcome to Beer Frame. My name is Luke Rosedal. Thank you for joining me. Basically what we're going to do here is I'm starting a series where I'm going to sit down with a different tasty beverage every video. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then we're just going to talk some bowling. So if you got a beer or two in the fridge, go grab one, have one with me, and whether it's professional, whether it's junior gold, USBC, anything really going on in the world of bowling in the world, we're going to talk about it. Anything that anybody's talking about or interested in, that's what I want to cover in this series. So for those of you who subscribe to the channel or who frequently watch the videos, I'm the guy behind all the videos and the reviews on the channel, so thank you very much for watching. It's kind of amazing how long it takes and how much effort goes into just a little 2 or 3 minute video. So all the positivity, all the comments, and all the support are really appreciated. It makes it really worthwhile, and it's really cool to do something and put it up and then get thousands of views on a video. So it's really very much appreciated. So first of all, what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the beer that I'm drinking here, and this is pretty cool for me because several years ago my brother and sister-in-law and a couple of their friends, it's Adam and Melissa Rosedal and then Jared and Emily Rudy, they started doing homebrew. And at first it was good stuff. You could tell it was homebrew, but it was good stuff. But they got very into it, and they got good, and they got good quick. And here about 5 or 6 months ago, they opened a microbrewery named Norsemen Brewing Company. It's in the Arts District here in Topeka. It's on the north side of town. For those of you who aren't familiar with the area, we're in Topeka, Kansas, about 50 or 60 miles west of Kansas City. And I think we're about a similar distance, maybe about 100 miles from just the dead center of the country. But this is their Schwarzbier Black Lager, and my tastes more tend to be, my rule of thumb is kind of if I can see through it, I don't really prefer it unless it's something like Woodchuck or Angry Orchard, something that goes along well that you can drink several of at a cookout or a barbecue or something like that. But when I want to just sit down and enjoy a beer, it's usually the darker stuff like stouts and porters. Now what I like about this is a lot of the time stouts and porters can be very heavy. So very heavy or very high alcohol content, and so you only really have about 1 or 2 of them before you feel full or you start to feel the effects of it. But with this being a lager, it's still it's still a lot lighter. It's still crisper and cleaner. I still get the depth of flavor and kind of that malty finish that I like out of the darker stuff. But this I can sit down and have several glasses of. So this is the one that we're going to be drinking with the episode today. Again, it's Norsemen Brewing Company. You can find them on Facebook. And something that's really cool is Emily Rudy, one of the owners, she actually did all the artwork. I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see that logo on there. She did all the artwork, and there's actually a gigantic mural out front of the building that she painted too that's just absolutely outstanding. It took her a while to get it done, but it's fantastic. The building they're in fits their, fits their style very well, or the kind of theme of the brewery. They've got a lot of stone in there and some kind of gigantic rough hewn pillars and everything. So it's very cool. So if you're in the area, if you're ever passing through, it's 830 North Kansas in the Noto Arts District here in Topeka. You can also find them on Facebook, so definitely check their page out. And check them out if you have the opportunity to. They're also very family friendly. They also have a barbecue food truck that's in there every day of the week that they're open, that makes some just ridiculous stuff. They've got this smoked meatloaf that they have jalapenos and cream cheese in that's just stupidly good. I don't know how you'd think about putting cream cheese in a meatloaf, but it's really outstanding. So as the title would suggest, we are going to talk about the blue oil that the PBA has been using here for I think about the last year or so. And there's been some suggestions or some comments or the idea that maybe it could make its way into a league setting. I think the commentators have said a few times, now wouldn't this be so cool for the people who bowl the regular leagues a couple days a week to actually have the blue oil down, to see what's down the lane, to see the transition, to see everything that goes on. And while I think, yeah, it would be cool, it's a good illustration. It's kind of fun to see when they zoom in on it and look at it and say, okay, well this is the transition that the lanes are going through. At first they show you the fresh where it's all blue and it's nice and pretty, and then as soon as the bowlers bowl on it, then you start getting streaks in it, and you can see the oil volume that's getting removed from the lane by the balls that are going down over and over again, and then they're wiping them off. And so, especially the more accurate you are, the more you're going to remove, or the faster you're going to remove oil from that one certain section. And as soon as you get enough oil removed to where the ball actually starts digging through the oil and starts hooking too early, then that's when they migrate in, and so they can show you, actually show you the oil on the lane and show you why the bowler is moving in, instead of you just having to watch and read the ball reaction and everything. So it's a very nice illustration. Now, while it's a very nice illustration, as you can see by the title, it's nothing that I think that's ever, I don't even think it has a remote possibility of happening in league. I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I talked to our center mechanic. We're pretty fortunate to have one of the best mechanics in the country at the center that I run a shop in. And I talked to him quite a bit about it, and the major thing, the biggest point against this, before we even talk about the relevancy, or, you know, some people have suggested, okay, well, you know, if we can see the oil on the lanes, and we can see what's out there, and then we can see it's being depleted, and then we can move before we leave a split or something like that. Before we even talk about that, we're going to talk about just the real world implications, or the real world consequences, or what it's actually going to take to get this stuff put down on a regular basis, or even just once in a while. The biggest factor that the mechanic brought up to me was that the dye stains everything, and you can see on the telecast when the bowlers pick up their balls and they wipe them off. I mean, half the ball is blue from all the oil streaks all the way around it. So that's number one thing, is that people are not going to want to end up with getting this dye all over their bowling balls and their hands and towels. And the biggest thing that he brought up to me was, the two biggest things really, is that he's going to have to go through the machine and clean it very often to get all that dye out, to keep it from staining, or to keep it from, I don't know, with the inner workings of the lane machines, I don't know if the dye is something that would accumulate and start clogging things up. I don't know much about lane machines, so I'd have to talk to him about that. But the biggest thing he said was that it would stain the lane. So over time, either what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to strip the lanes every single day, which is an extra cost, not just in cleaner and everything else, but it's the time to actually run the machine. You know, depending on whether it's a 32 or 40 lane house. I mean, smaller houses it wouldn't take so long, but if you're in a bigger house, it takes a while to run that machine. It takes a couple minutes per lane, and then by the time you move it, I mean, unless you have a flex machine that costs tens of thousands of dollars, you've got something to where you've got to put it down, you've got to let it run, you've got to come back, you've got to move to the next lane, then you've got to move to the next lane. It takes a couple minutes per lane, and by the time you get done, that's an extra hour or more of cost to run the lane machine, and cost of somebody to run the lane machine. With bowling already being so expensive, it's just another extra added cost. Not just for the extra time of running the lane machine, but the extra cost for the employee that's there to be on payroll, to be on the clock, to run the machine. Now the next thing here too is that if you do not keep the lanes stripped, or you do not keep that dye from staining the lanes, you're going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to tell whether it's the lane staining or whether it's the oil in the lane. And so the idea behind having tinted or dyed oil in the first place, it is completely removed, or is completely negated or irrelevant now, because the lanes are blue, and then you put down blue oil on top of it. You can't see what you're supposed to see, so the idea behind having the dye there in the first place has just become completely irrelevant. Now, to talk about the actual relevancy, or the idea behind having the tinted oil in the first place, for all the suggestions of, okay, you can see what you're bowling on, you can see when the lanes, you can see when certain areas start to become lighter, so you can move before your ball starts hooking too much. There's a few, actually there's not one single positive I can see about that. There's just a lot of confusion and more confusion, because the idea behind suggesting that, okay, well this area of the lane is becoming lighter now, so I'm going to go on ahead and move before this starts to affect me. The thing is that it really doesn't take near as much oil volume as you think to get the ball to skid down lane to begin with. Most of the reasons the patterns are so heavy in the fronts, or so heavy in the first 10 to 15 feet of the lane, is just so it holds up over the amount of time or the amount of shots that are going to be thrown. So I mean, most of the time, if you bowl in league, it is 3 games and you have 4 to 5 people on a lane, and you know, with people throwing the balls over and over again, and with as fast as bowling balls pick up the oil and absorb it nowadays, oil patterns are more just built to withstand that, or to make the shot hold up as long as possible. And let's not forget that the original intent or the original purpose of lane oil in the first place is just to protect the lane. I mean, the thing that they've done with patterns now is they can manipulate the difficulty, or they can manipulate where you play on the lane, or things of that nature with the oil, but the main purpose is just to protect the lane. It really doesn't take as much as you think, but again, going back to saying that the bowling balls pick up the oil so much faster nowadays that they have to be heavier patterns to withstand all of these huge oil soaking balls that are going down the lane over and over and over again. So first of all, to bear any kind of relevancy, or to really have that much of an effect, the oil would have to be much darker, because with as light as it is right now, you can't really see the differences, or the changes are so much more subtle unless you're actually walking up to the line and looking at the oil every single time before you throw a shot, or you know, walking halfway down the gutter to look at how it looks all the way down the lane, because unless you have the best pair of eyes on the planet, or binoculars or something like that, you're just not going to be able to see the differences. So the oil would have to be much darker, but the reason that the oil is not much darker in the first place is because if it was, it would obscure all the lane markers. Now there's really 2 types of bowlers. There are people who are very mathematical, who are very into marks and targets, and the indicators, all the indicators, and you know, all the marks on the lane. And these are things that the more mathematical bowlers use to target, and they make very mathematical moves. They hit certain targets, and then they see what their ball does, or they see what the result is at the pins, and then they move based on that. Then you have the feel bowlers that are extremely good at reading ball reaction. They don't pay so much attention to marks or anything. They just watch what their ball does all the way down the lane, and then they adjust based off of that. So for the blue oil, for the more feel bowlers, they're probably not going to care, because they don't really look so much at the marks anyway. Now it would be very, very different to have the blue oil obscuring everything, and so you're just looking at a blue lane. But I actually got a chance to bowl. There was a house here that had lane shield, and so it's a very purple tinted lane, and they had orange arrows on there, but the arrows weren't bright orange, or nothing was bright, or nothing really stood out, so it just kind of looked like a purple lane the entire way down. And that really wasn't that difficult for me, because I'm more of a field bowler, and so I pay more attention to the ball reaction, what the ball's doing. I don't so much care about, I do use the arrows and the dots a little bit, just as kind of focal points, but it's not anything that I particularly aim at. Now for more mathematical bowlers, if they weren't able to see their marks, it would probably drive them insane, because they rely on those marks and targets to look at that. So I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to hit this tracer board down here, and then the ball's going to strike, and when it doesn't, then I can use that to make mathematical adjustments, whether it's 2 and 1 left, or 3 and 1 left, or 3 and 2, or whatever they do. I don't really know, but it sounds cool saying that you're moving 2 and 1 left, even if you really don't know what you're talking about, but I digress. So the oil has to be light enough to where you can see all these lane markers through the oil, but it still has to be dark enough to where you can see the changes. So I do think that they found a good balance on the PBA telecast, where they've got it the right opacity, or they've got it the right transparency, so that you can still see the changes that the lane's going through, but you can still see the lane markers through the tint. Now the biggest thing that's got me going is this suggestion, or the idea that, okay, when the lane starts getting lighter, or when the oil volume starts getting depleted, then we can just go on ahead and we can make moves before it gets to the point where we leave a split or something like that. Number one, like I said before, the oil volume that's actually needed to get the ball to skid down the lane is not nearly as much as you think it is. So just because an area on the lane starts getting lighter, does not mean that there's not still plenty of oil to get the ball down the lane. So you'd have to put in a lot of practice to develop a relationship between the transparency or the opacity. At what point does the oil get light enough to actually affect the reaction of the ball? So you would have to, number one, have very good eyes, again, like I said, or a pair of binoculars, because it's not like anything you can go out and test it. You can't go out and run tapes and figure out, oh, okay, well, at this specific oil volume that looks specifically like this, then the ball starts hooking and then I need to move. But then you would, after that, you would have to develop that relationship with every single ball that you throw, because they make pearl balls, they make hybrid balls, they make solid balls, they make all these different balls at different surfaces, and so it's going to take different oil volumes for each bowling ball to get to the point where, okay, so the oil volume is maybe light enough that a solid ball at 2000 is going to dig through it, is actually going to start contacting the lane, is going to start hooking too much, where the oil volume might still be okay for a 3000 or 4000 grip ball to still get down the lane, or especially a pearl ball. So you would have to develop a relationship between each and every ball at every transparency level, which is something that you would have to pay so much more attention to. There would be so much more that goes into it than just watching your ball reaction, or for the mathematical bowlers, just watching what your ball does at the dots, at the arrows, middle of the lane, and tracer boards. It would actually make it, blue oil would make it so much more complicated than people actually think. You'd think it'd make it simpler. Okay, it's lighter here, so the ball's going to start hooking so I can move. It's really not that simple because of all the science involved. You know, so it would actually make it tougher. It would actually make it more difficult with the blue oil if you're actually trying to use it as a tool to help you in your adjustments. I would bet pretty well anything that everyone out on the PBA that's bowled on the blue oil, they either strongly dislike it, they don't like it, or they might even be indifferent. But I can guarantee you that 100% of them do not need the blue oil. They would not care. They don't need it. It doesn't help them. Because if you watch on the telecast, you can still see, okay, there's very dark areas and then there's lighter areas, and when you watch the ball go down the lane, you see it get out of the darker areas and think, oh, okay, well that's a lot of light oil, but the ball's still skidding. Or the ball's not hooking when you think it should, based on the transparency of the oil that it's going on. So it's really hard to tell at the very end of the pattern or at the edges of the pattern, because the oil is so light that you can't really tell the difference between where there's oil and where there isn't oil, because when you get to the end of the pattern, it just kind of looks, okay, well that looks like lane, but the ball's not hooking yet. And then all of a sudden it starts hooking. So using it as a visual tool is, I'm just going to say, it's completely not helpful at all. It's interesting to watch on the PBA Tour. It's a very fun and different type of teaching tool or an illustration. But that's really where it begins and ends for me. You know, and with all the extra cost and the extra work and the extra effort and everything like that, I don't ever see it getting into a league setting to begin with, just because it's completely cost and time prohibitive. Let alone the relevancy that I just don't see is there. It's just not there. There's no point in having blue oil down, because it just makes things more complicated. It's not going to help anybody in the way that they think it's going to help them. So, kind of in summation, it's never going to happen. It might happen sometime at like a training course or like a clinic or something like that, to where they can actually walk down the lane and show you what's going on. So it's going to be used as a training tool or an illustration only. It will never be used in an application or in a regular league setting where it's something to where you bowl on it every week. It will just never happen for a myriad of reasons. I think that's going to do it for the first episode of Beer Frame. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I still got a lot of beer here to finish, so I got to get working on this, but I've already got my next episode planned. If you have any suggestions for something that you would like me to talk about, or you have maybe you have something that's just a question that I could answer in a minute or two, I'll probably do a Q&A video where I'll answer several different questions in the same video. But if there's anything that you want me to talk about, anything that you're curious about, anything that you're interested about, please let me know, because I just want to talk about things that people are interested about. And especially, definitely, if you come across something that you think I'll like, the darker the better, let me know, and it'll probably be featured on an episode here. Once again, this is the Schwarzbier Black Lager from Norsemen Brewing Company. I really enjoy it. I'm about to enjoy it more as soon as I turn off the camera here, but that's going to do it for Beer Friend this episode. Once again, I'm Luke Rosedal. Thank you very much for watching.